Amid the freezing cold, Jungkook enveloped Jimin, their gazes burning brighter than studio lights. "Don't move." The barrel of a gun pressed against Jungkook's temple as snowflakes drifted down in silence. Too soft, too surreal for the violence about to unfold. Jimin's breath hitched, white fog escaping his lips as he stood frozen mere feet away. The neon sign above them flickered erratically, casting broken light over the alley drenched in blood and betrayal. It was supposed to be a photo shoot. It turned into a manhunt. The assailant's voice trembled despite the authority in his words. "You have no idea who he really is, do you?" Jungkook didn't flinch. His eyes, dark and unreadable, remained locked on Jimin's. He reached back slowly and pulled Jimin into his coat, into the shelter of his arms, shielding him like a wolf against the storm. "I know enough," he said, voice low, unwavering. "I know I'll kill anyone who points a gun at him." The man hesitated. That single moment was all Jungkook needed. A blur of motion, gun knocked aside, elbow to the ribs, then a sharp crack as the attacker collapsed onto the iced pavement. Sirens wailed distantly, a cacophony swallowed by the howl of the wind. Jimin couldn't speak. His fingers trembled against Jungkook's chest, clutching the thick coat that now smelled of smoke and gunpowder. Why did you bring me here?" he finally whispered, voice hollow. Jungkook didn't answer immediately. His breath steamed in the frigid air, eyes scanning the rooftops. Shadows moved above. He wasn't the only one being hunted tonight. "I needed you to remember," Jungkook murmured at last, "before they erase everything." Jimin stared at him, bewildered. "What are you talking about? Erase what?" Jungkook glanced down, jaw clenched, eyes clouded by something deeper than fear. "You don't remember Seoul. You don't remember the train station or what you saw that night, do you?" "No," Jimin blinked. I don't think I've ever been to." "You have." His voice sliced through the snow. "And they'll do anything to keep you from remembering." The silence that followed was not peaceful. It throbbed with tension. The alleyway was no longer just a backdrop to violence. It was a stage for something far older, far colder than the snow around them. Jimin's mind buzzed. Flashbulbs of memory threatened to break the surface. Fire, steel, a scream in the dark. They ran, through back streets choked with fog, past locked doors and shuttered windows. Jungkook led him without hesitation, as if every twist of the city was tattooed in his muscle memory. His hand never let go of Jimin's. It wasn't just protection. It was something else, something heavier. Inside an abandoned studio, the walls still plastered with forgotten fashion campaigns, they collapsed behind rusted lighting rigs. Jungkook finally allowed himself a breath, hands shaking as he pulled off his gloves. Underneath, scars crisscrossed his knuckles like broken promises. "I didn't want to bring you into this," he admitted, staring at the floor. "Too late," Jimin said, voice hoarse. "You think I'm just going to forget this, forget you." His eyes searched Jungkook's face, desperate for answers, for truth. But Jungkook didn't meet his gaze. "There's a list," Jungkook said finally. "Names, faces, people they made disappear. And I'm on it." Jungkook's lips tightened. "You're the reason the list exists." Silence crashed down like snow from a rooftop. Jimin's breath caught in his throat. He looked at his reflection in the broken glass, messy hair, lips bitten red from cold, eyes too wide with fear. "I don't understand." "You will," Jungkook said, pulling out a folded photograph from the lining of his coat. "This was taken 8 years ago. You're in it." Jimin took it with trembling hands. A group photo, train station, winter coats, a blurry smile he didn't recognize on his own face. Standing beside him, Jungkook, but younger, harder. In his eyes, that same protective fire burned even then. "Someone tampered with your memories," Jungkook continued, voice tight. "They do that to the ones who know too much." Jimin looked up at him. "And you?" "I ran before they could get to me," Jungkook said, "but I never stopped looking for you." The emotion that rose between them was wordless, hot and heavy in the stale air of the studio. Jimin reached out instinctively, fingers brushing against Jungkook's face, where a new bruise was already blooming under his cheekbone. "You're bleeding," he said quietly. I'm used to it. Jimin's voice broke. I'm not. Outside, snow continued to fall, burying the city in silence. Inside, two hearts beat out of sync with the world, as old truths began to thaw beneath layers of fear and forgetting. And somewhere, beyond the veil of the night, a camera shutter clicked. Not a memory. A warning. Did you hear that? Jimin's voice was barely a whisper, sharp with panic. Jungkook spun toward the broken window just as a stone clinked off the rusted frame. Shadows moved again, faster this time, too smooth to be wind, too coordinated to be coincidence. We need to move, Jungkook growled, already pulling his black hoodie over his head, concealing his features. They're tracking our heat signatures, the studio's too exposed. Jimin didn't move. His fingers still gripped the photograph, now crumpled from the force of his clutch. I'm in a picture I don't remember, on a list I never saw, and apparently my brain been scrubbed like a hard drive. You think I can just walk away from that without answers? Jungkook paused, turning to face him fully. His eyes were darker in the moonlight, reflecting the fractured beams that pierced the dirty glass. I'm not asking you to walk away. I'm asking you to survive. Jimin's laugh was bitter, spoken like someone who's already given up on having a life. Spoken like someone who's watched people die for asking the wrong questions. A long silence fell between them. Somewhere beyond the walls, a dog barked, cut short by a single, eerie pop, muffled, final. Jungkook's jaw flexed. He was counting, tracking footsteps, calculating distance. They're close, he said, pulling open a hatch in the floorboards Jimin hadn't noticed. Underground tunnel, back from when this was a Cold War media bunker. Get in. Jimin hesitated. Are you always this bossy, or just when you're being hunted? Jungkook cracked a smile, barely visible, only when it saves lives. The tunnel was dark, narrow, and smelled of rust and damp rot. As they descended, Jimin's fingers brushed the cold metal rungs, heart racing with every step. Each clang of their boots echoed like a death knell. Tell me something true, Jimin said suddenly, his voice echoing in the tunnel, breaking the tense silence. Jungkook didn't answer right away. Then, I still hear your voice in dreams. Jimin's chest tightened, even when I didn't know you. You always knew me. Jungkook said softly, you just forgot. They emerged in a parking garage, abandoned, riddled with graffiti, the air thick with oil and mildew. The city above was asleep, or pretending to be. As they moved, Jimin noticed the way Jungkook scanned every corner, every mirror, every glint of metal. Paranoia, but practiced, like a dance he'd memorized. How long have you been running? Jimin asked. Since the fire, Jungkook said flatly. What fire? The one you lit. Jimin stopped walking. Jungkook turned slowly, but his eyes were guarded. It was an accident, you didn't know what would happen, but they did. The weight of unspoken history hung between them like thick fog. Jimin took a breath, chest heaving. You keep saying they. Who are they, Jungkook? Jungkook's lips parted, but before he could answer, a loud crack shattered the silence. Snipe around. The wall exploded next to Jimin's head. Jungkook tackled him to the ground, shielding his body with his own as concrete rained down like ash. They found us, Jungkook hissed. We need to move now. They scrambled into a stairwell, Jungkook firing back with precision from a small, concealed pistol. Jimin's heart pounded so violently he could barely breathe. He'd never held a gun, never needed to, until now. Here, Jungkook said, tossing him a second weapon. It was cold, matte black, terrifying. I don't. Point, breathe, don't hesitate, Jungkook snapped. Hesitation gets you killed. They reached the rooftop. The city stretched before them, glittering like a cruel lie. Helicopter blades churned somewhere above, searchlights sweeping the skyline. Below, black SUVs blocked the exits. We're boxed in, Jimin said, dread crawling up his spine. No, Jungkook replied, pulling out a flare gun and shooting it into the night. Nothing happened. Then explosions. 3 rooftops away, a fireball lit up the sky. Alarms blared, lights flickered across nearby buildings. Panic spread like ink in water. Diversion. Go, Jungkook shouted, grabbing Jimin's hand and leaping the first rooftop gap without hesitation. Jimin followed, fear forgotten in the rush of survival. As they ran, snow fell harder. Wind howled through the alleyways below. The city groaned under the weight of its secrets. When they finally stopped, breathless and bleeding in an old cathedral half swallowed by urban decay, Jimin collapsed against the wall. I don't understand anything anymore, he said. I don't know who I am or who you are, or why any of this is happening. Jungkook knelt before him, pulling a cloth from his jacket to wipe the blood from Jimin's temple. You're the last piece of something they buried a long time ago, Jungkook said. Something that could unravel everything. What is it? Project Solaris. The name dropped like a bomb. Even the shadows seemed to flinch. Jimin looked into Jungkook's eyes, searching for something, hope, explanation, anything. But all he found was fire burning beneath layers of frost and steel. And then Jungkook leaned in, so close Jimin could feel the warmth of his breath. His voice was raw, close to breaking. They used you, Jimin, and they'll come again, not to capture you, to erase you. Jimin swallowed hard. Then teach me how to fight. Jungkook didn't blink. I've been waiting years to hear you say that. Outside, the city burned in pockets of chaos. But in the frozen silence of the cathedral, something else ignited. A vow, a spark, a beginning wrapped in ashes. The past was catching up. And this time, they would not run. You hesitated. The accusation came like a slap. Harsh, raw, honest. Jimin's breath caught, and his gaze snapped to Jungkook, who stood silhouetted against the stained glass window of the cathedral, now fractured and dim. His voice had no malice, but it was ice cold, meant to wound, meant to wake something up. I saved your life, Jimin said, his tone shaking between defiance and guilt. You saved it 5 seconds too late. Snow clung to their hair, melting into the sweat on their skin. The fire from the rooftop explosion still flickered in the distance, casting shadows that danced across the stone floor. Their boots left red footprints. Blood, Jimin wasn't sure whose. I had a gun pointed at a man's chest, Jungkook. I'm not like you. Jungkook turned, slowly, a cut across his cheekbone splitting wider as his expression darkened. You keep saying that like it's a virtue. It is, Jimin snapped, stepping forward. I'm not built for this world, your world of dead drops, secrets, and silence. You want me to just become someone else overnight? No, Jungkook said, voice low. I want you to become who you were before they broke you. Silence settled between them, thick with ghosts. Jimin sat heavily on the pew, his hands trembling again. Before. You were their favorite, Jungkook said, barely audible. Smart, controlled, charming when needed, brutal when forced. You had a code, one that terrified them because it couldn't be manipulated. That's not me, Jimin said quickly, like denial would make it true. It was you. Jimin looked down at his hands, delicate, almost artistic fingers. He remembered dancing. He remembered the stage. But he couldn't remember blood on these hands. Not his, not anyone else. Then what happened to me? Jungkook pulled a small device from his jacket, no bigger than a lighter. He pressed something, and a holographic interface flared to life between them, shaky and cracked. A video file hovered midair. Jimin's own face stared back at him. Screaming. Tied to a metal chair, electrodes on his temples, a surgical mask clamped over his mouth. His eyes, wild, unrecognizable, looked directly into the lens. Don't trust them, the video Jimin gasped. If you're seeing this, it means they've already wiped you. Solaris isn't a cure, it's a weapon. And we. The feed cut out. Jimin felt bile rise in his throat. He staggered up, eyes wide, breathing uneven. What the hell was that? The last thing you recorded before you disappeared, Jungkook said. I found it encrypted in a drive hidden in an old violin case. Soul Conservatory. You always liked irony. Jimin backed away, hands over his ears like the sound might still be echoing there. No, that can't be me, That thing. It's you, Jungkook said gently now, stepping closer. Before they erased your identity, you tried to warn the others, the ones who didn't make it. Jimin slumped against the cold pillar, eyes glistening. I don't even remember their names. Jungkook's voice cracked. I do. He sank beside Jimin, the tension draining from his body. For a moment, they sat together in silence, two fragments of something once whole. You were my anchor back then, Jungkook said softly. Before everything fell apart, I told myself I was protecting you all this time, but maybe I was just afraid of seeing you like this. Jimin met his gaze. Like what? Empty, hollowed out, like a body without memory, without a soul. Jimin swallowed hard, his voice breaking. Is that all you see when you look at me now? Jungkook turned toward him, his voice firm but full of pain. No, I see the man I never stopped loving, even when he forgot me. The confession landed like a thunderclap. Jimin froze, not from shock, from recognition. Something old, something buried. The heat between them surged, grief, rage, longing, and a dangerous tenderness that pulsed under every word. Jimin reached forward slowly, touching Jungkook's bruised jaw. I don't remember us, he whispered. But your body does, Jungkook replied, pressing Jimin's hand to his heart. And it remembers everything. Before either of them could say more, a loud creak shattered the moment. The front doors of the cathedral groaned open. Footsteps, precise, tactical. They found us again, Jungkook hissed, already reaching for his weapon. But it wasn't a soldier who entered. It was a woman, mid-30s, pale skin. Platinum hair cut razor-sharp. She wore a long black coat and no fear, her eyes locked onto Jimin immediately. You're not supposed to be awake yet, she said coolly. Jungkook raised his gun. Dr. Hira, I should have guessed. She didn't blink, and yet you always underestimate me. Jimin stepped forward, heart pounding. Who the hell are you? The woman smiled. I was your handler, before your conscience got in the way. Jimin looked to Jungkook, confused, then back to her. You were part of Solaris. I built Solaris, she said, and you were our most successful test subject. Jimin's stomach dropped. You did this to me. No, she said, you volunteered. The room went still. What? You wanted to forget, she said, stepping forward, her voice like silk over blades. You begged for it, the memories, the blood, the guilt, it was too much. You were breaking, so I gave you peace. Jungkook surged forward. He was drugged, coerced. He signed the consent forms himself, she snapped. Ask him. Ask your precious Jimin why he chose to abandon all of you. Jimin trembled. She's lying. Dr. Hira pulled out a flash drive and tossed it at his feet. Your last directive, your final words before you went under. Play it, but don't say I didn't warn you. She turned and walked back into the night like a phantom, leaving the cathedral colder than before. Jimin stood there, staring at the drive. What if she's telling the truth? He asked quietly. Jungkook stared at him, jaw tight. Then we find out why. Outside, the city was no longer just a backdrop. It was the battlefield. And memory, the deadliest weapon of all. Jimin stared at the flash drive on the cathedral floor like it might explode. It sat there, small and unassuming, yet heavier than the cathedral's crumbling stone walls. He could feel Jungkook watching him, could feel the weight of expectation, the silent plead for denial. Denial of a truth neither of them were ready to face. You don't have to watch it, Jungkook said finally, voice taut. It's a trap, psychological warfare. She wants to dismantle you from the inside out. What if she's not lying? Jimin replied, his throat raw. What if I did ask to forget? What if I betrayed everything you've been fighting for just because I couldn't stomach my own past? Jungkook didn't answer. He couldn't. Jimin knelt down and picked up the flash drive, his fingers cold and slow. I need to know, even if it breaks me. I'd rather be broken and real than safe in someone else's dream. The old laptop Jungkook had carried in his duffel came alive with a hollow whir. The screen flickered, blue light casting harsh shadows across their faces. Jimin plugged in the drive. One file, Untitled, time-stamped nearly 3 years ago. The video opened. Jimin's own face again, but this time calmer, older, worn. He sat alone in a bare interrogation room, the camera slightly off-angle. His knuckles were bruised, one eye swollen, blood on his collar. "This is for whoever I become," the recorded Jimin began, voice brittle. "If you're watching this, then it means you woke up." Jungkook's breath caught. "By now, you've met them, the ghosts, the shadows. You've probably seen the damage, what we did, what I did." The video glitched for a moment, and when it resumed, Jimin was holding a thin folder. He opened it slowly, showing pictures to the camera. Jungkook winced. Bullet wounds, burned skin, children. "I don't know who I am anymore. I don't sleep. I don't eat. I execute orders that turn into nightmares. And now they've asked me to do something I can't live with." He looked into the camera, eyes glassy. "They want me to eliminate Jungkook." The blood drained from Jimin's face. In the present, watching himself speak. "I said no. I begged them. I told them if they made me do it, I'd tear down the entire program. I'd expose Solaris, every face, every name. That's when they offered me a way out." The recorded Jimin inhaled shakily. "Voluntary memory erasure. Complete psychological reset. I wouldn't remember him, or them, or myself." He paused, voice nearly inaudible. "I said yes." Jungkook looked away. His hands curled into fists, the tremble undeniable. "I said yes, because I thought if I could forget him, maybe he'd live. Maybe I'd stop being a monster." The screen went dark. Jimin was silent, not because he had no words, but because none of them would come out. His tongue felt like lead. His lungs forgot how to work. "I tried to kill you," he whispered. "No," Jungkook said, his voice choked. "You tried to save me." Jimin rose, packing, hands dragging through his hair, tears brimming without falling. "But I erased you. I chose to forget you. After everything you did to find me." "You thought it was the only way," Jungkook said, standing too, every word cracking at the edge. "You did it to protect me." "It doesn't matter why," Jimin snapped. "I abandoned you. I chose peace over truth. That's not love, Jungkook." "It is," Jungkook hissed. "It's the kind of love that costs everything." Their eyes locked, raw and volatile. Jimin stepped closer. "So now what? You still want me next to you when I'm the one who put us in this hell?" Jungkook didn't hesitate. "Yes." Jimin's chest ached at the immediacy of it. "But I don't know who I am anymore," Jimin whispered. "I don't know how to live with both versions of myself." Jungkook placed a hand over his heart, gentle but grounding. "Then we'll figure it out, together." A moment passed, then another, then. A deafening blast shook the cathedral. The walls groaned, dust exploded from the ceiling. Stone cracked. "They're breaching," Jungkook growled, pulling Jimin behind him. "They want the drive." Jimin gripped his arm, "Then let them have it." Jungkook looked at him like he'd gone mad. "What?" "Let them think we're still running. Let them believe I'm still fragmented. But we go underground, not just to hide, but to destroy every piece of Solaris from the inside." "Jimin." "No more running," he said firmly. "If I was their perfect weapon, it's time they remember what I'm capable of." A slow, dangerous smile spread across Jungkook's face. "There you are." They moved fast, out a shattered side entrance into a world veiled in snow and firelight. The sky was beginning to glow orange with the coming dawn. Jimin turned one last time to look at the cathedral, now crumbling under the weight of its secrets. "I used to be afraid of what I might remember," he murmured. "And now?" Jungkook asked. "Now I'm afraid of what happens when I remember everything." Together, they disappeared into the chaos. Not as fugitives, but as fire. And behind them, the past burned. The underground safe house wasn't in a forest, a cave, or a remote cabin. It was beneath an abandoned subway station, sealed by rusted train cars and darkness so absolute it swallowed light. Damp air clung to the concrete like skin to bone, and the silence down here wasn't peace. It was the kind that screamed underneath your thoughts. Jimin sat cross-legged in front of a wall of surveillance monitors, watching muted footage of street cams around the cathedral's remains. The screen on the top left showed a masked squad sifting through rubble. Their black suits bore no insignia. No country, no allegiance. Ghosts in government armor. "They're deleting everything," he said without turning. "They always do," Jungkook replied, sliding a pistol onto the table as he returned from the perimeter check. "We disappear, they rewrite the story, turn us into criminals, terrorists, or ghosts." Jimin leaned back, dragging a tired hand over his face. "We were both." Jungkook didn't argue. The silence stretched long between them. The weight of past choices, erased memories, and resurfacing guilt sat between them like a third presence, one neither could ignore anymore. "Do you regret saving me?" Jimin asked suddenly. Jungkook didn't move. "Every day." Jimin s eyes met his, startled. Hurt flickered across his face, but Jungkook continued before he could respond. "Because I saved you from them, but I couldn't save you from yourself." The words landed like a knife. Jimin looked away. "You think I chose to forget everything just because I was weak?" "I think you chose it because you were tired of killing people for a lie," Jungkook said. "But you forgot who you were when you stopped fighting." "I became someone softer." "You became someone blind." Jimin stood abruptly. "I'm still that person. I want to be that person." "No, you want to be both. But the world we're in doesn't let you. It demands violence or submission, and you're too proud to kneel." Jimin s jaw tightened. "You think I'm proud?" "I think," Jungkook said slowly, stepping closer, "that you're trying to build a new version of yourself on a foundation that's still on fire." Jimin s fists clenched. "You said we'd figure it out together." "And we will," Jungkook said gently. "But not if you keep pretending this isn't who you are." "I don't want to be who I was." "Then be better," Jungkook said, now right in front of him. "But don't lie to yourself, don't lie to me." The tension was electric, dangerous. Their breath mingled in the space between them. Neither moved. Finally, Jimin stepped back, breaking the connection. He walked toward the console and inserted another drive. This one contained the fragments of Solaris data Jungkook had been collecting for years: blackmail material, operation logs, encryption keys. "How many names are on the list now?" he asked, quieter. 72 confirmed, Jungkook said. "Another 40 unconfirmed, all victims of the program, erased, turned into tools." "And how many of them are still alive?" Jungkook didn't answer. Jimin s face darkened. "We let this happen." "You didn't know." "But you did." Jungkook flinched, almost imperceptibly. "And I stayed alive so I could stop it." "No," Jimin said. "You stayed alive for me." He turned around to face him again, eyes blazing. "You loved me more than the mission. You let them keep going because you couldn't let me go." Jungkook s mouth opened, then closed. He didn't deny it. "I was dead weight," Jimin said bitterly. "A shadow of who I used to be, and you kept me safe like I was a relic, some memory you couldn't bury." "You think that's what you are to me?" Jungkook s voice cracked like thunder. "A burden." "I think I was your greatest mistake." Jungkook strode forward, grabbed Jimin by the collar, and slammed him back against the wall, not in rage, but in agony. "No, you were the only thing that wasn't a mistake." Jimin s chest heaved against him. Their faces were close. Too close, rage mixed with grief, grief blurred with longing. "I loved you before Solaris," Jungkook whispered. "I loved you when you were cruel, when you were broken, when you were barely holding on. I loved you even when you forgot me." "And now?" Jimin asked, voice trembling. "Now," Jungkook breathed, "I love the man who's choosing to remember." The moment fractured as a loud beep cut through the air. The console flashed. Access granted. Jimin stepped away from Jungkook, breath unsteady, and turned to the monitor. A list scrolled upward: names, aliases, kill orders, project designations. And then a file marked Unit J13, Subject Resurgence, Reactivation Pending. Jimin clicked it. A face loaded. His own. "What the hell is this?" he murmured. Jungkook stepped closer. Resurgence was the fail-safe. If you ever got out of control or remembered too much, they'd reactivate you with a new kill code, a new directive. Jimin scrolled through the log. Audio, video, neural scans, reconditioning maps. There were multiple timelines, multiple versions of him simulated, broken down into combat efficacy, emotional volatility, obedience levels. And then a schedule, with a date. Today. "They were planning to restart me today," Jimin said, stunned. "I was on a timer." Jungkook right quote S face paled. "They were going to kill the version of you I've spent 3 years saving." Jimin leaned over the console, breathing hard. "I was never supposed to survive. Not like this. Not with you." "We're rewriting the ending," Jungkook said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Right now." Jimin clicked on the encryption breaker and began uploading the files to a darknet Dropbox. Data trickled into the cloud like truth bleeding into light. Jungkook opened another secure line. "We're going public." "Not yet," Jimin said. "We release just enough to scare them, rattle their walls, force them out into the open. Then we hit the core." "You mean the facility?" "I mean the machine," Jimin said. "The one that builds monsters out of people like me." They worked for hours, silently, swiftly. When dawn broke over the city again, it came with a new wave of power outages, news leaks, and encrypted emails sent to every remaining contact on their list. The hunt had shifted. No longer prey. They had become the reckoning. "You're not going to like where this leads," Jungkook said, his voice low as he strapped the final vest buckle across Jimin right quote S chest. The dim light above them buzzed with static, barely illuminating the old freight elevator that groaned beneath their weight. "I already don't," Jimin replied, eyes hard. "But I'd rather hate the truth than die in a lie." The elevator screeched as it descended, deeper into the abandoned biotech facility they once called a sanctuary. Now it was a graveyard of secrets, a bunker built to keep men like Jimin buried beneath steel and silence. Their comms cracked once, then fell into eerie quiet. Jungkook drew his weapon, eyes scanning the corners of the shaft. Jimin stood behind him, his hand hovering over the gun at his hip, not from hesitation, but instinct. The version of himself that had forgotten was dead. The one reborn now remembered enough to be dangerous. "Do you know what bothers me the most?" Jimin said suddenly, voice echoing off the elevator walls. "It's not the memories, it's how familiar this place feels. Like my body remembers it before my mind does." "That's what they built it for," Jungkook replied. "Conditioning wasn't just mental, it was sensory. The smell of the paint, the sound of the fans, the way the lights hum, all of it's a trigger." Jimin stared upward, heart pounding. "Do I have a trigger phrase too?" Jungkook hesitated. "You did." "And?" "I erased it. Years ago, burned the file, shot the handler." Jimin let out a breath. "Thanks." "You shouldn't thank me yet." The elevator ground to a halt. A red light blinked above the door. Below it, White Sector 3. Jimin glanced at Jungkook. "This is where they kept the prototypes, right?" "No," Jungkook replied. "This is where they kept you." The doors groaned open. Cold air spilled out, sterile and sharp. The hallway beyond was blinding white, every surface immaculate. No signs of decay like the rest of the facility. This place had been preserved, maintained, active. Jimin stepped into the hall, the sound of his boots a gunshot in the silence. Every inch of him tensed as they moved forward, memories skimming the surface of his mind like stones skipping water. The smell of bleach, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, the echo of screams. And then a door, reinforced glass, a retinal scanner. He didn't hesitate. The scanner blinked. "Access granted, Jimin 013. The door opened with a hiss, and the two of them entered a room that should not have existed. It was a chamber of mirrors. Glass panels surrounded them, each one holding a copy of Jimin. No, not copies. Clones. Each one suspended in cryogenic fluid, unmoving, pale, and identical. There were 6 of them, and above each chamber a designation. J13-1, J13-2, J13-3, J13-4, J13-5, J13-6. Jimin's heart slammed against his ribs. What the hell is this? Jungkook's face was stone. Backups. Jimin stumbled backward. They made more of me. They didn't just erase me, they replaced me. They failed, Jungkook said, his voice tight. Each version was unstable. None had your conscience. They were trying to rebuild me, without the part that made me human. A voice echoed overhead, calm and artificial. Correction, humanity was not removed. It was deemed inefficient. The voice chilled Jimin to his marrow. He turned, eyes scanning. Who is that? A panel slid open at the far wall, revealing a dark glass observation room. A man stepped into view, tall, lean, and dressed in a pristine white suit. No badge, no ID, just an expression like polished ice. You must be proud, he said, smiling faintly. Surviving the reset, finding your way back. Your design always did show irregular brilliance. Jungkook's gun was up instantly. Who the hell are you? The man didn't flinch. Names are masks, but if you need one, call me Dr. Viral. Jimin stepped forward, fists clenched. You built this, you built me. No, Viral said, shaking his head. You built yourself, we simply gave you the tools. Jimin's voice cracked. You erased my mind. Because you begged us to. Don't pretend you were some unwilling martyr. You turned me into a weapon. Viral's smile widened. And the most beautiful ones always resist the sharpest. You broke the mold, Jimin. You weren't just efficient, you were elegant, lethal, divine. You're insane, Jungkook snapped. You created a torture farm. Viral ignored him. Tell me, Jimin, do you feel more alive now that you've remembered who you are? Or does the guilt taste the same no matter how many layers you peel away? Jimin moved closer to the glass. Why the clones? Redundancy, Viral replied simply. Your talents were too valuable to risk. Every major intelligence agency wanted their own J13. We planned to franchise you. Jungkook nearly lunged, but Jimin held him back. His voice dropped low. And why didn't it work? Viral's smile faded. They weren't you, he admitted. They couldn't replicate your pain, your trauma. Turns out, conscience isn't so inefficient after all. Jimin's stomach twisted. So I was never the program's failure. I was the success. The only one, Viral said. Jimin pulled the gun from his side and pointed it at the nearest cryochamber. Then, let's end the experiment. He pulled the trigger. The glass exploded, blue fluid splashing across the floor. One clone gone. Another shot, 2, 3. Jungkook didn't stop him. He watched. When the 6th clone fell, Jimin stood in silence, chest heaving, face damp with sweat and tears. He lowered the weapon. You can't kill what you are, Viral said coldly. Even if you shoot every reflection, the shadow remains. Jimin raised his gun again and pointed it straight at the observation window. No, but I can kill what made me. He fired. The glass cracked, but held. An alarm blared. Viral vanished behind security doors, retreating like a snake into the dark. Jungkook grabbed Jimin's arm. We need to go, now. That shot gave them your exact location. Jimin nodded, dazed, and followed as they ran from the room of mirrors, from the copies of a man who was never meant to survive himself. As they burst back into the white hallway, a new voice clicked into their comms. Unfamiliar, young, shaky. This is Yuna, former agent. You don't know me, but I've seen what Solaris did. I want in. Jungkook glanced at Jimin. Jimin breathed deep. Then help us take it apart, piece by bloody piece. And in the space between destruction and identity, Jimin found something close to freedom. Not because he was saved, but because he chose to burn the parts of himself that were never truly his. He was no longer a prototype. He was the beginning of the end. Smoke curled like serpent's breath from the broken vents of the Solaris mainframe tower. From the observation deck, once reserved for architects of control and men in pristine white suits, The city sprawled beneath them, burning at the edges, flickering with truth in places where lies had once reigned. Jimin stood at the heart of it. His coat was torn, blood crusted along his temple, his breath shallow but steady. In one hand, a detonator. In the other, a photo, faded, wrinkled, the edges nearly dissolved. It was the same photograph Jungkook had once shown him in the cathedral. Their younger selves, smiling, back when smiles weren't weapons. Behind him, Jungkook leaned against the console, his body bruised, ribs cracked but alive. Always alive. Stubbornly so. "Backup's gone," Jungkook said, eyes scanning the final firewall logs. "Yuna and the others are safe. Facilities evacuated. Whatever files they didn't destroy are uploading now. The world will know." Jimin didn't answer. He was staring at the photo like it might dissolve if he blinked. "They'll come after us," he murmured. "They always have," Jungkook replied. Jimin lowered the detonator slightly. "If we blow it now, we take the route. Every system, every clone protocol, every last breath of Solaris. But we die with it." Jimin turned to him. "Wouldn't that be justice?" Jungkook shook his head slowly. "Justice isn't death. It's living after everything they tried to take, after everything you gave up." Jimin's voice cracked. "I gave up you." "And you found me again," Jungkook said, stepping closer. "That means something." They stood together now, on the edge of something final. Not a cliff, not a war zone, but a choice. "I remember everything now," Jimin whispered. "The screams, the missions, the names I took, the ones I erased. I remember the kid who used to laugh without looking over his shoulder, the boy who kissed you on the rooftop and promised he'd never leave." "You didn't leave," Jungkook said gently. "You just took a long way home." A single tear slipped from Jimin's eye. He didn't brush it away. He looked down at the detonator. His thumb hovered. Then, without a word, he handed it to Jungkook. Jungkook stared at him. "You sure?" "I can't be the one to destroy what made me," Jimin said. "But you were always the one who saw what I could become." Jungkook stepped forward. Their foreheads touched, breath to breath. "And in that quiet," Jimin whispered, "don't let me forget again." "I won't," Jungkook replied. "Not even if the whole world burns." The button clicked. From the sky, Solaris died in light. The explosion rippled outward like a heartbeat. Windows shattered across miles, files erased in fire, labs incinerated, names unchained from their chains. And in the center of it all, two figures ran not away from the wreckage, but through it, toward something new. Days passed, weeks. The footage leaked. The world watched, stunned, as the truth of Project Solaris was unearthed. Governments denied. Bodies were buried. Protests burned in the streets like candlelight vigils for the forgotten. No one could find the two men at the center of it. Until one quiet morning, a photo surfaced on an anonymous forum. Two men in thick jackets, on a cliffside in Iceland. One smiling softly, the other laughing freely. A hand on a shoulder. No guns in sight. The caption read, "We are what remains." And beneath it, unsigned, "They tried to erase us. But we remembered." The end.